Hello students, today in our English class we are going to deal with a very important writing skill, and that is summary writing. Summary means a brief account. Writing a summary is a great way to process the information you read, whether it's an article or a book. If you are assigned a summary in school, especially in examination, the best way to approach it is by reviewing the piece you are summarizing. To summarize a passage is to bring out briefly all the ideas contained in it. The proverb, brevity is the soul of wit, is aptly fit for summary writing. Now, in our today's class, we are going to discuss the easy yet significant steps to write summary. Let's discuss how to write a summary. Step number 1. Read the passage thoroughly and repeatedly if required to get the idea contained in the passage. You should read it without making any kind of mark. Instead, focus on the really understanding what the author is trying to say. This might mean that you need to read one sentence more than once. You might also need to reread the entire piece. Step number 2. Underline the main points in the passage. Now this will help you start to put the arguments of the passage in your own words. You can also ask yourself what point or points rather the themes come up throughout the entire passage. Step number 3, which is very important. Do not focus on the evidence, examples that the author uses to support those points. Number 4. Use only indirect narration, or rather indirect mode of narration. Avoid questions, commands, exclamations and examples. Number 5. Use only the third person and we. Avoid you. Then the main points should be written sequentially. So you are not expected to rearrange the sequence. So you have to follow the logical sequence of the passage. Number 7. The length of the summary should be less than half of the original passage. Next, do not try to write any opinion that is not in the original passage. And last but not the least, do not try to copy the sentences of the original passage to write the summary. So girls, these are the basic points or steps that you need to remember while you are trying to write summary. Now, let me show you an example or a specimen. Let's first read the passage. Self-reliance is the pilgrim's best staff, the walker's best tool. It is the master key that unlocks all the difficulties of life. Help yourself and heaven will help you is a maxim which receives daily confirmation. He who begins with crutches will generally end with crutches. Help from within always strengthens, but help from without invariably enfeebles the recipient. It is not the sheltered garden, but rugged on the alpine cliff where the storms beat most violently, that the toughest plants are reared. It is not by the use of corks, bladders, and lifebuoys that you can learn to swim, but by plunging courageously in the waves and buffeting them. To wait until some charitable man passes to stand arms folded, sighing for a helping hand is not the part of any manly hand. The habit of depending upon others should be rigorously resisted, since it tends to weaken the intellectual faculties and paralyze the judgment. The struggle against adverse circumstances has, on the contrary, a bracing and strengthening effect. So, girls, this is the passage, and I have read it for you, but for your own benefit, you may read it once or twice, as many times as you want to, before going to summarize it. Now, if you read the passage once or twice more, you will notice that the author has used proverbs, he has used some metaphors, and has also cited some examples to support the theme of self-help. But as I have told you, we are going to omit these evidences while we will write the summary. But for our own understanding, we are going to underline the main points that come up from the passage given. So the relevant points that come up from the passage are as follows. Number 1, self-reliance is the pilgrim's best staff. Number 2, it is the master key that unlocks all the difficulties of life. Next, help from within always strengthens, but help from without invariably enfeebles the recipient. Number 4, to wait until some charitable man passes to stand arm folded, sighing for a helping hand. Number 5, depending upon others. Now, this is an incomplete phrase that I have picked up from the passage, and the last point, which is a continuation or continuity of the previous point, weaken the intellectual faculties and paralyze the judgment. So, girls, according to me, these are the relevant points that I have come across while going through the passage. Now, we will just deal with these points and we will try to write a new paragraph, a new summarized paragraph based on the original given passage. Now, as we have chalked down the main points of the passage, our specimen summary will be like this. Let me just read this out for you. Self-help is the best help. In order to thrive in life, one must be self-reliant. This strengthens the mind, enabling one to fight against the mighty odds of life. On the other hand, help from others weakens the person. Hence, one should shun dependence on others. One should fight all alone against adverse circumstances. Dependence on others weakens the mental powers and deadens judgment. When one struggles to overcome difficulties by oneself, one gets divine help. Now, this is the summary based on the original passage that we have just gone through. Now, I'm sure that you can understand between selecting or underlining the relevant points and writing the summary. The summary should reflect the theme and message that the author wants to convey. But the expression should be of your own. You should write the summary in your own words. You are not expected to copy the sentences from the original passage. Now, here, I just want you to remind that a summary shortens a passage. Substance reduces it further, and précis condenses it to the extreme. So all these three writing tasks may appear to be same, but they are different from one another. Girls, since you have learned to write summary, here are 3 homeworks for you to practice. I'll read the passages for you, but still you may pause the video if and whenever required. Write summary of the following passages. Passage number 1. In every country, people imagine that they are best and the cleverest, and the others are not so good, as are not so good as they are. The Englishmen think that he and his country are the best. The Frenchman is very proud of France and everything French. The Germans and the Italians think no less of their countries, and many Indians imagine that India is in many the greatest country in the world. This is wrong. Everybody wants to think well of himself and his country, but really there is no person who has not got some good and some bad qualities. In the same way, there is no country which is not partly good and partly bad. We must take the good wherever we find it and try to remove the bad wherever it may be. We are, of course, most concerned with our own country, India. Unfortunately, it is in a bad way today. Many of our people are poor and unhappy. They have no joy in their lives. We have to find out how we can make them happier. We have to see what is good in our ways and customs and try to keep it, and whatever is bad we have to throw away. If we find anything good in other countries, we should certainly take it. So, this was the first passage which you are expected to summarize. Passage number 2. Trees give shade for the benefit of others, while they themselves stand in the sun and endure scorching heat. They produce the fruit by which others profit. The character of good men is like that of trees. What is the uses of this perishable body, if no use of it is made for the benefit of mankind? Sandalwood. The more it is rubbed, the more scent does it yield. Sugarcane. The more it is peeled and cut into pieces, the more juices does it produce. Gold. The more it is burned, the more brightly does it shine. The men who are noble at heart do not lose these qualities even in losing their lives. What does it matter whether men praise them or not? What difference does it matter whether riches abide with them or not? What does it signify that whether they die this moment or their lives are prolonged? Happen what may, those who tread in the right path will not set foot in any other. Life itself is unprofitable to a man who does not live for others. To live for the mere sake of living one's life is to live off the dogs and cows. Those who lay down their lives for the sake of a friend or even for the sake of a stranger will assuredly dwell forever in a world of bliss. So, girls, this beautiful passage is given to you so that you may summarize it. Now, girls, here come the third and the last passage for you to summarize, and this is a very relevant topic for you all. So, let me just read it out for you. The great advantage of early rising is the good start it gives us in our day's work. The early riser has done a large amount of hard work before other men have got out of bed. In the early morning, the mind is fresh and there are few sounds or other distractions, so that work done at that time is generally well done. In many cases, the early riser also finds time to take some exercise in the fresh morning air. And this exercise supplies him with a fund of energy that will last until the evening. By beginning so early, he knows that he has plenty of time to do thoroughly all the work he can be expected to do, and is not tempted to hurry over part of it. All his work being finished in good time, he has a long interval of rest in the evening before the timely hour when he goes to bed. He gets to sleep several hours before midnight, At the time when sleep is most refreshing and after a sound night's rest, rises early next morning in good health and spirits for the labors of a new day. It is very plain that such a life is more conducive to health than that of the man who shortens his walking hours by rising late, and so can afford in the course of the day little leisure for necessary rest. So girls, in today's class, you have learned to write summary. Hope you all have found the class to be helpful and you all have enjoyed the class. So stay safe, stay home and stay healthy. Thank you all.